In the comments section of my video on pulling yourself out of the cultural wars, I got a very good question from someone called Mr. Playlist Man. And Mr. Playlist Man asked, we may be able to pull ourselves out of the culture war, but those who do it voluntarily. Even when it makes it possible to talk to people with differing opinions, how do we ask others stuck in an echo chamber to come out and play with everyone else? So there have been several philosophies and spiritual practices over time, and some recent ones, that advise you to, let's just say, sort yourself out before you take on the world. And with good reason. You need to be a forthright individual, lest your neuroses and your prejudices and your biases dictate your politics and keep you in a safe echo chamber versus venturing out into the unknown on a quest for gold or a quest for quality. But let's say you're enlightened enough to be able to pull yourself out of the culture war. And I'm going to define how I'm conceptualizing enlightenment from the Gumption Traps in Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. So a person who is enlightened is someone who is primed to detect quality, and in this context is someone who has gumption. So that may sound a little odd, but let's see what Persig says about that. I like the word gumption because it describes exactly what happens to someone who connects with quality. He gets filled with gumption. The Greeks called it enthusiasmos, the root of enthusiasm, which means literally filled with theos, or God or quality. The gumption filling process occurs when one is quiet long enough to see and hear and feel the real universe, not just one's own stale opinion about it. So gumption is something like enthusiasm, and let's just say if you are there and you want others to come out and play, you are an enthusiastic player who wants to engage. Now, how do you get others to play along? Well, to do this, you better be prepared for what Persig refers to as gumption traps, things that are going to stifle your gumption and set you back. And defenses are powerful gumption traps. You know what defenses are because you can feel them. Often you feel, let's just say, triggered, meaning you feel negative emotion. You feel like you're being threatened bodily when you're actually not. And so for simplicity's sake, let's just say defenses are basically ways to protect your ego from harm. Meaning if you're holding on to the sacred objects that bolster the story, that construct your personal narrative of yourself, it's going to be difficult to let them go. You have a sense that if you let down your defenses, you have this visceral feeling that's not good, that actually does feel similar to being threatened bodily. But that feeling is precisely what you need to tolerate if you're going to ask others to come out and play, because to do so means you have a chance of them reacting to you negatively, especially the way things are now, and that your defenses are going to be triggered. So when you get this visceral feeling, this negative emotion that your ego is being threatened, use that negative emotion to remind you to voluntarily pull yourself out of it and back into the real universe. The place where you are curious, where you're opinion free, and you're ready to detect quality in whatever happens next. So my answer to the question is, if gumption, if quality guides you to ask people to come out and play, which is a positive thing, and so that's the good, is to ask them to come out and play. You want them to join you in your enlightenment, let's just say. You have to be prepared to drop your ego, because if your defenses come up and you lash out trying to defend them, then you're going backwards, not forwards. You're going back where you started, into your own echo chamber. And remember, in Metaphysics of Quality, going backwards is immoral. However, if you practice the type of meditative consciousness, or being still, as Persig said, being still long enough, or he also refers to it as the Zen beginner's mind, which is the in-the-moment curiosity I mentioned, that it takes to be attuned to quality, And you are prepared not to let your ego get in the way of your enthusiasm. You're prepared to resist this trap of ego defense. Then when you are in that state and you're open to what the situation is going to bring you, then Dale Carnegie's book has some good tactics to help in this process, namely carefully crafted ways to use good manners, good social manners, and how to indicate to people that you are opening to whatever they bring without judgment, and that's important. People feel like they're going to be judged, they're not going to play. So you have to convey that, and that's what Dale Carnegie is very good at. He's, let's just call him a master of social interaction. So this indicates that you're a willing participant in the game you'd like to play with them. And when they know this, their defenses go down and they are much more likely to join the fun. So another thing I'm thinking of is the Tao Te Ching. And I actually think about the Tao Te Ching a lot. So according to Dr. Anthony McWatt, whose thesis I'm now reading on the metaphysics of quality, extremely helpful, Anthony McWatt indicates that among several influences on Peirce's philosophy, Tao Te Ching is one of the main ones. And Tao Te Ching is sort of divided up into two sections. One is how to understand and use Tao, and the other is how does a leader use Tao as virtue. So De in Tao Te Ching is virtue, and that's advice to rulers, leaders, whatever. So if a person who can voluntarily pull themselves out of dualistic thinking, you are a leader. So let's state the approach of avoiding the gumption trap of ego and defense, as well as the advice of Dale Carnegie. And let's look at this in the same thing in the words of Tao Te Ching. And I'm using, as always, Stephen Mitchell's translation. This is verse 66. All streams flow to the sea because they are lower than they are. Humility gives it its power. If you want to govern the people, you must place yourself below them. If you want to lead the people, you must learn how to follow them. The master is above the people, and no one feels oppressed. She is ahead of the people, and no one feels manipulated. The whole world is grateful to her because she competes with no one, and no one can compete with her. So it's like if you are enlightened, you're kind of above, but you're enlightened enough to know that the only way you're going to bring people on board is to meet them lower, let's just say lower than they are, with humility, with openness. Let them be the defended ones and be open and non-judgmental to that so that their defenses can come down, and then you can join on the same level. Let's just say a lot of this stuff is, a lot of the things we're talking about is getting someone over onto your tribe, so to speak. So let's hark back to the topic of being able to tolerate whatever negativity the person stuck in the echo chamber may respond with to your invitation. So you're ready for something negative to start out with when you invite the people in to join you, to come out and play, let's say. The master never reaches for the great, thus she achieves greatness. When she runs into a difficulty, she stops and gives herself to it, and doesn't cling to her own comfort. Thus problems are no problem to her. So clinging to your own comfort is another way of saying you stay defended. Don't cling to your defenses, and you will encourage others to drop theirs because they will see it's obvious they don't need them with you. Tough? Yes. That's why people spend years in Zen practice. That's why they spend years climbing the spiritual mountain or in therapy. So a shout out again to Dr. McWatt. I know it's been a while, but you wrote something that is not only well written, but highly readable and a very good primer for the metaphysics of quality for anyone. So here's a little love letter. Dear Dr. McWatt, thank you for not getting bogged down with academies. With gratitude, your fan. And here's a link to his work in the description below. I think I already mentioned that. So I hope that made sense, and I'll see you next time.